mynews.studio.
With China's solar panels spreading across deserts and cities, we're seeing its carbon emissions start to level off. Is this the climate turning point the world's been anticipating?
Today's date is February 20th, 2026. China, which produces more greenhouse gases than any other country, is showing an interesting trend. Its carbon dioxide emissions went down by 1% in the last quarter of 2025, and overall for the year, emissions dropped by 0.3%. That's the first time we've seen emissions flat or falling for more than a few months since March 2024. How did they pull this off?
The main reason is solar power. Last year, solar electricity generation jumped by 43%. On top of that, China added a huge 75 gigawatts of new energy storage. This combination meant renewables didn't just keep up with demand, they actually outpaced it. Even with the economy growing 5% and power demand rising by 520 terawatt-hours, emissions dropped in key sectors. Power fell 1.5%, transport was down 3%, and building materials saw a 7% decrease. Only chemicals went up by 12%.
That's a big deal, considering China is responsible for more than a third of global CO2 emissions. The world's been watching to see if China would stick to its Paris Agreement pledge to peak emissions by 2030. With such rapid economic growth, weren't people concerned emissions would just bounce back?
Absolutely. That risk was there. But the momentum behind clean energy has been enough to offset it so far. Fossil fuel emissions only rose by 0.1%, while renewables filled the gap. Wind generation went up 14%, nuclear by 8%, and coal power actually fell 1.9%. To put it in numbers, renewables generated 530 terawatt-hours, more than enough to meet increased demand. And with those 75 gigawatts of new storage, mostly lithium batteries, the grid could store and release renewable electricity as needed, cutting down on wasted energy.
Wait, when you say wasted energy, you mean curtailment, right? The power that can't be used because there's no demand or storage?
Yes, exactly. Curtailment. With more storage coming online, less renewable energy is going unused.
So, what specifically made this emissions plateau possible? Are there particular policies or technology at play, and could other countries use them too?
China has started requiring that new solar and wind projects include energy storage, usually between 10 and 20% of a project's capacity. This helps stabilize the grid, especially in remote regions like Xinjiang and Gansu, where curtailment rates used to be as high as 10%. Now those rates are dropping. They've also updated grid rules so prices are more flexible, and invested in long-distance transmission lines to move power from where it's generated to where it's needed.
So the takeaways are, pair renewables with storage, reform grid rules, and invest in transmission. But is this plateau here to stay? What happens if the economy accelerates or policies change?
That's the key issue. The trend looks sustainable if current policies continue. Mandates like the storage requirement and value-added tax rebates of up to 30% for storage equipment have driven the 75 gigawatt storage boom. The next 5-year plan, due soon, is expected to focus on green production and aims for coal use to plateau by 2027. But if those policies weaken or coal approvals increase, emissions could easily rise again.
Some challenges remain, though. Emissions from chemicals went up 12% last year, and new coal plant approvals haven't stopped. Industries like chemicals, steel, and petrochemicals are supposed to join the emissions trading system by 2027, but progress is uneven.
Right. For a true long-term peak, China would need to set renewable quotas for industry, enforce hard coal caps, control methane, and electrify more industrial processes, for example using green hydrogen. At the end of 2025, emissions were stable at around 15.1 to 15.2 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. That could be the peak if these policies stick.
And why does this matter globally? Because China's emissions path could decide if the world meets the Paris climate goals. If China can grow economically while cutting emissions, isn't that a powerful signal for developing countries everywhere?
It is. If China's emissions stay flat or start to fall, the world has a real chance at limiting warming and preventing the worst climate impacts. It's also a demonstration that policy, technology, and investment together can deliver results.
So, to wrap up, China's emissions are flattening thanks to rapid growth in renewables and storage, but it's a fragile success. The next steps depend on solid policies and transforming heavy industries.
And for the world, this is both a sign of hope and a call to action. Thanks for joining us as we explored China's emissions plateau and what it means globally.
Thank you for listening. This episode was brought to you by mynews.studio. Try it now for free.